I just titled it Money Talk, so we'll talk about a whole range of different topics, whatever comes to mind.
I,
So
I'm
yeah,
still connecting.
you're still connecting?
It says connecting.
Oh yeah, happy Monday morning on this beautiful June 9th. I'm excited for today. Kind of a big day in astrology. In the astrology world, Jupiter goes into Cancer,
Yeah.
and Jupiter changes signs every year or so. But yeah, maybe we'll get
You,
later. So yeah, what's on your mind? What's happened to you in the last week in June and 2025?
well, not a lot, though. I do think it's interesting. We had a couple big things happen in the markets this last week that I did not expect, and global geopolitics as well.
Oh, what's going on?
Um, but before any of that, I just wanted to bring up for anyone who watches this later or is watching it now. Your article on astrology and finance was obnoxiously accurate. My
Like,
wife and I'm a Gemini, my wife's a Libra, and we read our pieces and we were both like, well, damn. This is so
thank you. That means a
bravo to you, Brandon.
Thank you, thank you. And yeah, no, I'm a Gemini too, and Libra rising and moon. So Gemini, Libra are kind of the two that I understand the best, just because they're most me. So I kind of have the most to say about those ones. But
No.
yeah, no, it was a really fun piece. I've been kind of like had the pieces of that piece for like a long time. Finally, time I got to put it all together. So yeah, that was definitely a fun one for me.
Nice. I'm curious how you even got around to doing that, because that seems so outside of, we were talking prior to going live. Like I'm I'm very interested in like private market predictions because you don't have as much access. So you have to be a little bit more creative in where you find your sources. But astrology and finance is two that I would never think go together
Oh yeah,
at
and
all. So I'm just curious how you even got around to doing that, how you figured that out. And like,
yeah,
oh, in this condition, this means this. So
yeah. It's
care
been
to elaborate?
So first thing to know about Geminis is we love like learning and like almost like investigating. I guess something doesn't make sense to a Gemini, they won't ever get fully on board. In fact, like Mercury and Jupiter kind of have this opposition where like because Jupiter's all about like more faith and Mercury's all more about like logic. And so Jupiter's been in Gemini the last year. So it's kind of just making a mess because Gemini is like a logic sign and Jupiter like so like faith based. But yeah, Jupiter and Gemini the last year is just making like so much like information overwhelm and so much like shiny object syndrome. It's like we're here with a focus. So that's another reason to be excited about Jupiter going to Cancer. But yeah, no, I mean it ties in with the thing about how my life is gone. Like going back to like childhood, I just kind of understanding that money was going to be this important thing to live my life the way I wanted to live it, and so getting that, I guess, sort of like financial freedom was kind of a goal. And
Mhm.
then my whole paradigm kind of got shattered when I figured out how inflation worked. And I was around the age of like 11 or so. And I'm like, wait, what? That doesn't make sense. I was just like, how am I supposed to like get what I want if like my money's like always losing value? And I'm like, and then it's like, it was basically just that realization that I couldn't save my way to wealth.
Right.
And yeah, it really just shattered my whole paradigm. So then I started learning the investing game and just learning everything I could about how money worked, how inflation worked, and then actually learning about how the system worked. I actually validated my concerns that this isn't right, and I'm like, oh yeah, it's actually worse than I thought. But then I came into Bitcoin, and that was really what put my inflation fears at ease. And yeah, that was 2021 when I got into Bitcoin, and then yeah, randomly I just had a friends I had one friend who like looked at my like, astrology birth chart, and I want to say around that time, maybe it was like 2018 for the first time. And yeah, she thinks she told me I was like a Libra rising or something. Like didn't know what that meant or didn't think about it until 2022. I was like, oh yeah, it just kind of came up again a couple times, and so then I started to study that. And yeah, like a good Gemini, I study things until I go down the rabbit hole in 2021, that was Bitcoin, and then I continued in 2022. But 2022, I started the rabbit hole of astrology and been going down that rabbit hole the last few years. So now it's a big part of who I am and something I use almost every day.
So how does with astrology specifically, like, how do you make those connections? You know, the idea of, like, based on if you're X sign, um, is it like a consumer behavior thing where typically this sign behaves this way, which means that your style of investing should be this, or is it kind of a vibe thing? Like, I'm just curious how those 2 connect.
Yeah, no, you're actually kind of spot on with that. So yes, there's the caveat to remember, like, you're more than just your sun sign, so it's like, yeah, like, in your chart, your big 3 are your sun, moon, rising. So your sun, moon, rising can be 3 different signs, and so you can have, like, 3 different vibes or a different area of your life, so to speak. And then you put involve, like, Venus, Mars, Jupiter, Saturn, the whole thing, and then you can see how, like, each individual human gets a little, like, more complex in their different, like, sides to who they are. But, yeah, and then there's the things that affect, like, society as a whole. So, part of the way that I understand is, like, it's almost like, sort of like space weather. It's kind of how you would plan your day differently if it was sunny versus if it were raining. And you can see how those kind of different effects of what's going on in the world. Yeah, it's kinda like vibes. So it's like, what vibe is, like, happening today? What vibe is happening next week? Yeah, what's really cool about it is you can look, like, next week, next year, and, it's really just a study of cycles because the sun goes around the zodiac in a year, stays one zodiac per month. Moon goes around
Mhm,
the zodiac for 1 month, and, yeah, there's all these different cycles going on, some bigger, some larger. Larger ones are really fun to get into 'cause, I look at Uranus specifically. Uranus goes around the entire zodiac in about 84 years or so, and Uranus is gonna go into Gemini in July. We're yeah, like a month, about a month away,
mhm.
and Uranus spends about 8-ish years in one sign. So 84 years ago, last in Gemini was about the time of World War II. The time before that was about the time of the Civil War in 1865. And the time before that was actually around the American Revolution War. And so you can kind of see there's a bit of the signature with Uranus and Gemini. It's kind of like peak hard times, so to speak. I've
I
now,
love that.
now attached, if you've ever heard this, you might have heard it before, but there's this cliche of like, hard times make strong men make good times make weak men make hard times, and the cycle repeats. So I've kind
Mhm.
of attached that with Uranus' cycle as well, because I originally understood that cycle to be about 80 years. And so I kind of just put it at ease for me because now I understand the hard times as like, I can understand like the purpose behind like, we kind of got ourselves into this mess because of how weak we got from getting complacent with certain things. But the hardship serves to make us stronger. And the stronger we get, then we can like bring stuff back to prosperous time. So I'm very much an optimist at heart, and that cycle actually helps me believe that we will get back to prosperity in a couple decades. But Uranus and Gemini will definitely be a fun. So yeah, I think I answered some of that question.
Yeah, yeah, you did. It is interesting though, just your comment of um I don't know. This is totally speculative. Like this is very much outside my realm of expertise. It's just an observation that I've seen. Excuse me. Um, is that when you look at specifically this last 80-year span. So what would that be? The 40s till now? So it
Yeah,
actually fits very well. You know, you hear about at least I've heard from a lot of guys who made a fortune in the financial markets, but aren't institutional. So that's hedge fund managers. That's the dudes who made their fortune betting against everybody.
yeah,
One of my professors falls into that camp, right? There was this idea that, you know, in the 40s, we established an order, an international order. The US did specifically
yeah.
that
After World
served
War
us.
II, after World War II, they signed like the
Yeah,
Bretton Woods Agreement, which made the U.S. dollar the global reserve currency, and you've kind of
right,
seen been the global superpower ever since. That's one of my
right.
predictions for the Uranus and Gemini transit of the next 8 years is kind of the right Uranus and Gemini tough times, especially the US. And so I think the rest of the world is kind of getting tired of like the US's dominance and looking to establish a more balanced world economy.
Well, and see, that's the funny thing is what I've learned over the past year is because it wasn't just the US dollar being
Yeah. What else happened?
the there's some other stuff that were kind of implied, right? And maybe these were actually
Yeah.
signed into international law. I'm not an expert in international law by any means, but there were things like, oh, well, we're going to have free and open trade with everybody. We're going to rebuild the world. We're going to rebuild the world for democracy was the big thing.
Yeah.
Um, we're going to fight communism because that is
Yeah.
an antithesis to rebuilding the world for democracy, right? So there's all this stuff happening in the background, but it hasn't really ever been that way. It seems like the whole global order since the 40s has been an act. Um, and I think stuff like the AfD party rising in Germany shows that. Germany, if I remember correctly, Germany has not had a conservative party take any serious seats in local elections since Hitler,
Really?
since the 40s. So I wrote an article about it not too long ago where I was like, yeah, the global order is dissolving.
Yeah.
China hasn't played along for a long time, but even like, if you dig into the tariff thing, you find out all these countries, us included, were playing all these games in the background to ape like we're getting along, but it was never really that way.
It was never that way. I
No,
mean,
I
you
mean,
have negotiations, like it's certain things that you disagree on, but certain thing you only agree on one thing in order to establish something like a trade partner.
right. But I mean, like, a really good example of this is non-tariff trade barriers,
Yeah.
you know, which everyone does. This is not us versus the rest of the world thing. Everyone across the globe does it. And when I was learning about this, I'm like, oh my gosh, these are just ways to get around the whole we're going to have free trade thing. It's global leaders deciding, well, actually, I want an unfair advantage for my country, which I can understand why they would want to do that. Um,
Because it
so
was
we're going to do X, Y, and Z.
it was in the face of oppression from countries like the U.S. who are just establishing so much dominance. The balance of power is like to get all that power, you kind of take it from someone else.
Hmm. But even the big players did it with each other. I mean,
Yeah.
China, US, and Russia have been screwing each other over forever in different ways. China, for example, they took the economic route and decided, well, we're just going to keep our prices artificially low forever since Deng Xiaoping, and then we're going to take control of the world's manufacturing. The US is like, well, we're not going to fight another war. And we saw how that worked out, 80 years on, and we've toppled governments, we've replaced leadership in other countries,
Oh
we've
yeah.
fought several proxy wars. Um, and then Russia's hard because theirs has pretty much always been. I heard a phrase from a Mises Institute video that Russia's a gas station with a military, so it's like their whole thing has just been oil.
Yeah.
But even I think they would have done something similar to both us and China if there hadn't been so much internal struggle going on there.
Yeah.
Um,
No, yeah, makes sense.
and maybe they did, and they're just better at hiding it. So that's the other thing. So I think it's funny, just your comment about the Gemini thing is like we build these international structures. It seems like to facilitate trade, to control chaos, to promote growth is
Yeah.
what's on the what's on the label, right?
Yeah.
But then in the background, it's never that. And
No,
so it's like moving forward, uh, it makes me wonder if we're going to see another world war, we're going to see another big conflict, or what? You know, moving forward, like is my big question is this global game that we've been playing finally coming apart? And then what does that mean for, because again, I'm a financial nerd. What does
yeah.
that mean for investment, for economics, global growth? Like what does that mean moving forward?
Hmm. And yeah, thinking of a few different things with all that. But no, yeah, the balance of power. the world politics is definitely very interesting. But yeah, what does it mean for like growth? And there are some things in the astrology that do point to like kind of increased conflict and war over the next few years for the rest of the decade. But and yeah, Uranus and Gemini kind of yeah, the last like three times all included like those wars. But like this time it's a little interesting. Well, Pluto just went into Aquarius last year, which there's another fun cycle. Pluto is the slowest moving planet, so it goes around the zodiac every like 250 years almost. Last time Pluto was in Aquarius during the American Revolutionary War. There's part of like, and yeah, Pluto being in Aquarius, which is an air sign, and Uranus being which is another air sign. They're kind of going to be like talking to each other and helping each other out a little bit. So it's like the conflict of what the rest of the decade might look like. It has a bit of a like revolutionary undertone. Like it's all kind of like for freedom. So it's like, and I look at the cost of living crisis as one of the biggest indicators as to why people aren't free. I mean, that's why I've never felt like fully free in my. I don't know about a lot of other people, but yeah, especially in a place like the U.S. where like 70% of people live paycheck to paycheck, like the financial struggles put a huge burden on people to really not live life the way they want to live it.
Right.
Um, so like it's kind of like, and yeah, we built. You're saying we built like the international infrastructure, and yeah, we kind of built it like last century really, and the world's always changing, and the world's changing faster and faster. Like the rate of change is accelerating. So I think the structure how it is now is kind of not really working anymore and needs to be changed in some ways. That's why I'm such a fan of the Constitution document that's
Mm.
the time for hundreds of
Yeah.
years. But yeah, ultimately, like if things aren't perfect, then isn't change the desired outcome? Don't we desire change? And change that we want is more kind of like financial freedom or like a sense of financial freedom. I think like there's definitely only less than 10% of people that are like actually free, maybe even like 1 to 5%. So it's like most people, financial freedom feels like a bit of a fantasy. And I mean, not hard, but going back to like the hard times make strong men make good times. The hardship makes us stronger, and then as we get stronger, we're able to build a world of prosperity. I think we can build a world where financial freedom can be more of a normal thing.
Right. You know, the older I get, the less I believe. Well, first off, something that I believe wholeheartedly now is the idea of financial freedom in the case of the American dream, which we've talked about before,
Yeah,
um, was a lie sold to us by the banks in the 30s.
right. Yeah,
It was something that, and actually Edward Bernays, and the only reason I'm more pro this now than I was before is I've been reading the works of Edward Bernays. I'm going through what I call my dark book list, which is like, here are all these books that are like esoteric in nature or written by some of the worst people on planet Earth. So, and
yeah.
Edward Bernays falls in that camp.
The recent one was like the book propaganda.
Yes, and for those who don't know, Edward Bernays was he's called the father of public relations. He was the PR consultant behind the campaign to get women to smoke cigarettes, overthrow, I think it was the Guatemalan government for Chiquita National Brands. He drove the war bond movement in all the world wars.
Chiquita was the banana company, right?
Yes,
That was in Panama.
Panama. Thank you. Um, so he was instrumental in that, building the public support for the overthrow of the Panamanian government.
Yeah,
He convinced the world to eat bacon for breakfast. He's behind a lot of these big things. Not
interesting.
all of them are good. Some of them are, but not all of them are good. And as I've been reading through his work, um, I realized that one of the things he talks about, and he preaches it over and over and over again, is the goal of a PR consultant is to convince the rest of the world that what you want as a PR consultant is actually how the world should work. And I think that the American dream of, oh, you're going to save your way to financial freedom and you're going to go work 40 years, get your pension, you're going to go buy a home, buy some US bonds or whatever. It was a lie. It was a lie sold to us by the people who own those assets, which is
Good.
banks. institutional money lenders. Like, it was the work of the PR consultant that convinced us that that's how any of this works. And it, for those people who tune in and have had this feeling like I've had before, which is like, okay, how come I'm being told to go get a college degree, go work a job somewhere for 40 years, go buy a home, go into debt to buy all these things, and somehow I'm supposed to be free when you read the biography of any of these actual multi-billionaires, and that's how none of them started.
Exactly.
And it's because that's not how wealth is. That's not how the sausage is made.
Exactly.
Uh, so for anyone who's watching this, like, you're not crazy if you feel that way. It's you're waking up to realize the lie that we've been told. And I'm pro home ownership. I'm pro, investing your money and getting a retirement account. I'm pro all that. It's just
That's,
coming to the realization that as much as I hate it, people like Grant Cardone were right. You were sold a lie.
yeah.
And good on you for waking up if you felt that way. And then from
Yeah.
there, it's like, okay, how do I actually make wealth?
Exactly. Yeah. No, I think more and more people are definitely starting to wake up for that. I mean, you're
Mhm.
saying it like we're doing what we're told, and then it's leading to like the average person being upset. Like it's like it can't be like it's not working. And I mean, yeah, in my opinion, maybe the American dream used to work better, but 50 years of compound inflation, like 2% doesn't sound like a lot, but you compound that over 50 years, and yeah, now most people cost of living has only gone up, and more and more people rely on debt to be able to afford it. So there's definitely a huge
Yeah.
affordability crisis there. Yeah, we definitely do need to, and yeah, I think it's more of how the system is set up. Like, yeah, they told us the lie, and if we buy into that, oftentimes yeah, the story you
Right.
said, the average like billionaire, millionaire has some of the craziest stories about like how they did this and then this happened and then
Yeah.
kind of a crazy ride.
To put this into like a financial perspective too, because that's like what I spend most of my time looking at. Your mortgage as a homeowner is an annuity for the bank that signed it. For 30 years, they are promised pretty much risk free a certain monthly payment with interest. That's huge. I mean, if any one of us had the opportunity to go and buy into an investment that would pay us every single month for
Uh,
30 years consistently, yeah, of course not. Like, why wouldn't
I
you
think
just buy the crap out of those?
exactly. I think people call it real.
Yeah.
I know I'm not the biggest fan of real estate, but yeah, I hear anyone who raves about real estate, they're like, "Oh yeah, it pays me each month." But yeah, I mean, if you buy a house, you have like a 30-year mortgage, you don't actually own the house, the bank does.
Yeah. It's a loan against your, how did I heard a great quote, and this was how it was phrased. I think it was this. A mortgage is not a loan against your house. It's a loan against your income collateralized by your home.
Right.
So, that is the reality of it. And, I do think going to like college and everything is very valuable for certain things.
Yeah,
But
for certain careers, I think makes more sense to like first know what you want to do, and then there's a handful of careers where college is the path to get there. But most people, like the 18-year-old who doesn't know what they want to do with life, that goes to college,
right.
just cut. I mean, in my travels, like because I've done like college and then I've like traveled to different countries, and I'm like, oh, I've gotten way more out like traveling to different countries than I have at like all my time in college.
Yeah, well, and to quote Jordan B. Peterson, the liberal arts colleges in this world have been an abject failure. What they were built to do in the 1300s is not what they do now.
13.
Um,
Damn.
for like, or even earlier, I mean, a lot of those colleges, like Oxford, a lot of those really old liberal arts colleges, they go back to the medieval times, and
And they failed.
they failed in the sense of if you talk to people like JBP, he believes that the purpose of liberal arts studies is to teach you to speak, write, and think. They don't do that.
No, I mean, especially the thinking one, like, because like almost a big sense of freedom is like the ability to
Mm.
think independently and think for yourself. But yeah, the whole thing about like and the propaganda being sold, the lies of like how to live your life, these things, you'll be successful.
Right.
Like, I mean, people like you and I put some, like, yeah, like critical thought, independent thought about behind it. And like, no, this doesn't make sense. So now we're kind of like thinking through like, how,
Mm.
what is a better way to do things? And
Right.
yeah, I think schools, I mean, yeah, they teach you what the mitochondria, the powerhouse of the cell. They teach more like facts, and they like memorize these things. They don't like. So this is how, yeah, not enough like thinking questions that get.
Mm.
So I love asking questions that get people to think.
And I guess for people who watch this later and are looking to like go back to school or looking to go to college, how do you avoid that? Because everywhere you go now at an accredited university, you're going to have to take a year worth of liberal arts classes spread across your degree. The biggest thing that I found is that it's not homogenous. So there, when you go to universities, you will find the professors that are actually there to teach you to think. And you're probably not going to like them because they're not the most approachable. They're not the most agreeable, but they're going to teach you to think. Some of my favorite professors were ones that I argued with all the time because they knew that that was their job. Was, they were here to challenge everything that you've been taught to get you to think.
Oh, yeah, I love it.
Um, and I will say this as well, like, one thing that I've noticed personally as I've looked through a lot of these ultra successful people, and we're going all the way back to JP Morgan, further back, if you can learn to be a little bit scrappy and be willing to challenge the prevailing narrative and specifically challenge in a way where you're doing your research. I'm not talking about the sitting on your porch going, I don't know about that. I mean, actually going and saying, okay, well, maybe working a factory job for 40 years isn't the move. What is?
Right.
If you're willing to do that and you're willing to put in the work, you're going to get a significant unfair advantage on everyone else.
Absolutely.
That's
Now,
a
you mentioned you
Go.
had like your list of like bad books. I got another one to add for you. I actually have it right here. When we were talking about education, it reminded me of it. It's called Outwitting the Devil by Napoleon Hill. This is a right.
Ooh.
This one is a very good one. And there's actually, yeah,
You know.
where you the part where he hella criticizes like education and kind of everything we were talking about.
No.
But yeah, this book has
People
takeaways.
For people who are watching us, Napoleon Hill, a
Yeah,
little bit of a history lesson because I'm a huge nerd again. That
yeah,
hope I made that very clear. Um, Napoleon Hill was one of the people that was instrumental behind the JP Morgan Chase takeover of the banking industry.
yeah. What was his role?
I don't remember. He was I mean I could look it up. I have my computer open. Um he all I remember though is if you read Think and Grow Rich, he mentions how often he was sitting in the private meetings that JP Morgan and others had at their homes. And he would just be there late into the night talking to some of the most powerful men in US history.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. I was close friends with was it Andrew Carnegie? Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, Andrew Carnegie was the one who kind of like wanted him to write Think and Grow Rich and kind of this book as well. Yeah, this interesting Outwitting the Devil is a very interesting piece because right, Napoleon Hill originally wrote the manuscript after the Depression, Think and Grow Rich, the same thing. And no, it actually kind of reminds me of how a lot of things are coming up from kind of that time because yeah, just going back to like the 8 year cycles and things like that. Last time Artist was in Gemini was just after the Great Depression during World War II. And so all those same themes are coming up again. And so I find it
Mhm.
very interesting how you see something like this because Outwitting the Devil, Napoleon Hill originally wrote it in like 1938 or so, but it was never published. It wasn't published until 2011. The Napoleon Hill Foundation decided to publish it. And they're like, okay, it's time. And no, it's super interesting. Pretty much most of the book is Napoleon Hill doing the devil himself. And it's almost like in the court court trial setting where he gets to admit all his tactics of how he gets people to what they call the habit of drifting. They get away from like their life's purpose and how the devil makes these subtle influences in our everyday life. Fear is the big one. Fear of anything is like ruled by the devil.
Right. For the background for people who are watching this, so Napoleon Hill, he was a reporter, freelance reporter and
Yeah.
writer. Um, which fun little background piece for everyone who hated writing in school. Some of the most influential men in history, including Napoleon Hill and Bernays, who up until the 90s charged $1,000 an hour for his consulting service. Um, they're writers. They started out, in the powerhouse industry of their time, which was writing. So learn to write. It helps out a lot. But
Yeah.
he spent time interviewing at great length Carnegie, Rockefeller, Bell, Eastman, Ford,
He interviewed all of them.
Schwab. Sorry, not J.P. Morgan Chase. Charles Schwab.
Yeah. No,
Um,
he talked to Think and Grow Rich, heard about Winning the Devil, are kind of his the results of him interviewing really thousands of people, of the most successful people, and even just everyday people. He was really on this mission to discover what made someone successful. That's what makes it look so cool, is it's the result of so much time and effort and research.
right, right. So yeah, I mean, I'll have to look at that book. What was it? Overcoming the Devil, Beating the Devil,
Outwitting the Devil.
Outwitting the Devil. I'll have to look at that because one of the things and this is not my idea, so I'm not going to take credit for it. It's actually Glenn Beck's idea. Um, he learned in his like recovery process that one of the best ways to learn is to find as many voices as possible that could possibly disagree with each other.
Yeah.
And I've spent so much time looking at like constructive and useful voices. Like I spent the last 2 years almost trying to find evidence and literature of constructive use cases of, okay, if you do these 10 positive things, what does it actually do?
Yeah.
And so I came up with a list of like, okay, well, here's a list of books that tell me the opposite. And let's see what they have to say.
Now, yeah,
So after,
reading books of topics you might disagree with is a very
Mhm.
foundational part of learning. Probably very foundational part of critical thinking.
Yeah,
Because, yeah, I know you've seen. I think this more top of mind for me a few years ago, but definitely still around. The people like that just watch like Fox News or something, and they get like all their information like one perspective. Like we do live in a world where you can like watch the media channel that tells you that you're right, but yeah, if you don't like challenge your own opinions, then that's how um that's how you don't meet people halfway where they're at.
right. And also, this is not a right left thing either. CNN, if you just listen to CNN or MSNBC Daily, you're going
Right.
to get the same result. It actually comes from challenging that. I feel like it comes from challenging that cognitive dissonance
Yeah.
and being like, yeah, I'm uncomfortable reading this. And you can start small. Like there's a book that has kind of an infamous reputation now called 48 Laws of Power by
Oh yeah,
Green.
yeah,
Uh,
good one.
I have you read it?
I've read like half of it.
Okay.
I
I've
will second half.
I've tried to read that twice. And both times when I've started it, I just get a pit in my stomach. I'm like, I really shouldn't be. So I haven't gotten to the point where I can stomach reading that yet.
Interesting.
Um,
Like, like the what is it that makes you want to stop?
it it's the Machiavellian feel of the book
Uh-huh.
specifically. So I am not a person who believes in Machiavellian power dynamics. I don't think they exist. I think they may exist in the short run, but for me, this comes back to the economic perspective about how natural monopolies don't exist
Yeah.
because there's a point on the supply and demand curve where people just go without whatever it is that you're selling.
Right.
And so I don't believe that Machiavellian power dynamics if you don't have a military, Machiavellian power dynamics don't work. because eventually people will just leave
Yeah.
unless you can force them to stay, right? So that in my mind, that's not an issue of power. That's not an issue of like inherent power and inherent inequality amongst in systems. That's an issue of corruption.
Yeah.
And it's an issue of public offices no longer serving the public and instead serving their own needs. They're
Oh, yeah,
violating
for a while.
what?
I've said that same sentence for a while too.
Yeah. It's
Uh,
them
uh,
violating their fiduciary responsibilities.
Right. Yeah, I think reading even the author Robert Greene talks about the 48 laws of power of like more of a defense mechanism. Understand the tactics that are being used against you.
Mhm. Yeah.
And it goes into that of like, yeah, things like corruption. Yeah, I said a long time how like the social contract between like the government and the people has was been broken a long time ago. The
Mhm.
original social contract being that government officials serve the best interests of the people. But yeah, they've been a little more self-serving on that spectrum for a while now.
Right. And that's been the game. Kind of going back to this 80-year cycle thing. That's been the game forever. Probably ever since the CIA realized that they could murder a public official and get away with it.
Yeah.
It probably goes back that, and it's probably even further back. This is probably something that's been around human history forever.
Yeah.
So
Well, I
I
mean,
haven't.
I've always looked at it like he who controls the money controls the world. And yeah, I mean, going back to like Bretton Woods agreements and the the US has controlled the global order for. But yeah, the federal bank, the central bank of the United States was formed in like 1901, something like that. And so yeah, I kind of go back toward and like it's written in the Constitution that only gold and silver can be used as money because the founding fathers understood how government officials could corrupt the complete control of money. And
Mhm.
so that's something I look back to time my financial perspective on it.
Right.
And now,
And
like if they control it and then we get into like education, why don't people learn about money in schools?
goes back to the same. I'm going to turn back to Edward Bernays' comment of your goal as a public relations consultant is to convince everyone that what basically goes against their own self-interest is exactly what they need.
Hmm.
And again, it's not in every case. My brother and I were talking about this. Like, bacon for breakfast probably isn't the worst thing in the world. You know,
Yeah.
convincing people to buy war bonds is probably a good thing in the situation that he was working in, right? However, if you read his book, you learn some stuff. For example, when he was trying to convince people to eat bacon for breakfast, and by his own admission, American breakfasts at the time where he was doing that were dietetically sound. They gave you everything you needed.
Hmm.
Um, so I feel like it's a case like that where the banks have been playing this game for so long. They're like, oh crap, how do we make sure that no one learns how bad we duped them and themselves? Like the other thing, I always joke about the banking cartel, but also you build a system like ours, you become chained to it
Yeah.
at the highest level. I mean, even Elon Musk, right? Elon Musk's livelihood depends on debt.
Yeah.
It's
I mean,
how he runs his life.
yeah. That's common for a lot of people, especially a lot of people on the top.
So you become chained to this lie that you've built. So it's actually not in the best interest of the powers that be to have people know about wealth, know about personal finance, understand
Right.
financial.
Kind of sounds like you're talking about like debt slave there.
Yeah, because that's the system that's the beast that they've created.
Exactly.
Um, and it's funny, one of the things that I tell this a lot to, because I've interviewed several people recently where they see my history in social media marketing specifically, and they're like, "Oh, could you run our social media for us?" And I told them like, I'd be happy to do the work. I'm good at it. that is a beast where once it gets started, you cannot stop it. And I feel like the debt trap is one of those beasts. There are just some things in this world where if you let it off the leash, it's going to eat you. And it's
Yes,
just a matter of time.
until the debt beast eats you.
Yeah, until this whole thing comes crashing down because you've
Yeah,
taken out so much leverage where it's no longer possible to function.
yeah.
Uh,
So I would stress a lot about that, say like 5 years ago, and there was really nothing that eased my concerns until I kind of started studying Bitcoin. So for me, it's kind of like within the system, like what you're talking about is true. Like within the system, debt is coming from everyone, and yeah, debt slavery is almost a little inevitable. Cost of living is always going up, and wages don't keep up. So I mean, the net result is most people get a lot poorer and poorer each year, and then that causes debt to go up. But so within the system, there's not really the American dream is like a lie. So
yeah.
the trick now is making like a new system, and I have a lot of hope around Bitcoin kind of being the seed of that new system.
Mm. And one of the things that I realized, and I think we've talked about this before, you and I off live. One of the things that cryptocurrency that's kind of in the background that helps defend against that beast being let off the leash again, because people will take out margin on crypto. They do it all
Yeah,
the time.
yeah. It's almost like the best way I conceptualize that is like I mean with like new technology, the
Mm,
first iteration of it is usually the most like unstable and also the most like the most clunky, the most expensive. So if you think about like how we cover like raw electricity, I mean even that
right,
is like highly volatile.
right.
But then you get more adoption of time and that kind of quells some of the outliers like you're talking about taking extreme leverage on that.
Well, but see, that's this is the beauty of. By the way, hello, surviving cancer. Thank you for joining us. We've been talking about whether or not the American dream is real and building a new system. It's been a very fun conversation.
Mhm.
Um, the crypto ecosystem punishes extreme leverage, which is
Yeah,
what should be happening in the real economy.
yeah.
Like,
It happens naturally too, because that's how you
yes,
most volatile days are like really just people that took on too much leverage getting like flushed out, and then it kind of
yeah.
cascades. So, yeah,
Um, I think I don't know if we've talked about this before, Brandon, but I know I've talked about it with some of my other friends and family. If you look at these days where Bitcoin loses 20 grand or whatever, Ethereum plummets,
yeah,
you dig into the back end because you'll get, whenever that happens, you get a ton of conflicting voices of
yeah.
saying,
What's
oh,
going on?
see, you know, you'll see some people going, oh, see, we told you like crypto's not real. It's going to fall apart. And then other people saying, mad because bad.
Yeah,
Then you look in the background and it's things like thousands of people taking out millions of dollars of smart contracts on margin to buy Bitcoin or buy Ethereum, right? Smart contracts are enforced automatically.
yeah. So
They're created.
yeah, in the sense of taking on like leverage, like you, if you think yeah, like the price will go up, and then you put a bunch of leverage behind it. If the price falls a bit, but like is not what you expect to do, then your like loan can get like margin called, and so then
Yep.
whoever holds that contract for you is forced to sell it for you, and then that just causes the price to plummet even further. So yeah, a lot of
Right.
cryptocurrencies in those volatile days, that's usually one of the elements of it.
Right.
But it's good because
And
it's flushing out all that leverage, all that debt behind it.
y- yeah, no, it's huge. I was talking to my brother about this on Sunday. It's like the fact that the smart contract innovation is an automatic contract that once it's generated, it cannot be changed because it's on the chain and there are set parameters for when it's triggered. You can't do any kind of funky financial engineering to get yourself out of that, which means it's going to punish people who take on too much leverage, more leverage than they can handle. And that's huge because it keeps the system lean, it keeps the system healthy.
Yeah, takes a bit of the human element out of it too, where it's like
Yeah,
if you had someone more like a politician in that sense, they might like be pulling strings to make sure to avoid a bad fallout like that.
exactly, exactly. And you can't do that in a lot of these chains because everybody knows. And it is very much the feeling of like to quote some scripture, I know not everyone believes in that, and that's fine, but I think the Old Testament provides some really interesting philosophical lessons at a non-religious level. The idea of like their sins being projected, proclaimed from the rooftops. The cryptocurrency ecosystem is very much that way, where it's like everyone knows they see all the transactions, or they can see them by logging into the chain and seeing them. Um, you have contracts that are automatically enforced, and you can't have some group of lobbyists or groups of politicians or groups of big interest come in and say, well, we screwed up, but we really don't want to be punished for that. And so that is huge for me.
Yeah,
That is huge because it gets rid of that element that has frustrated me for so long about the US economy.
exactly. No, me too. It just furthers the notion about how we're in a midst of great change, honestly, like
Mm.
very historic times in history. And the next decade kind of points to a continuation of that, maybe even a intensification of that. But so maybe the next few years to decade, next couple decades will be bumpy. But I think it's all for the cause of making the world a better place, a more prosperous place for all of us.
We'll have to see. I can't say yet because I don't know, but we'll see.
Like,
I'm optimistic, but we'll see.
as a superpower,
Yeah.
whatever you think then becomes reality. Whatever you
Yeah.
believe in that way.
I know I'm setting myself up so whatever happens, my family will be fine.
Yeah,
And I
like
I guess that's the biggest lesson coming from the midst of chaos is like if the global system's falling apart and things are crazy right now, the best thing you can do is make sure you are in the best position. Kind of like making yourself be that strong human, that strong man
yeah,
to benefit those in your circle so that when everything calms down, you are in a good position.
yeah. No, almost like don't watch the news, just kind of like water what's around you. Yeah, big theme for the next year of Jupiter being in the sign of Cancer. It's kind of like water what water do, and then those fruits eventually bear fruit, or like the seeds eventually bear fruit.
Mhm. Yep. I think that's a good strategy. We ended up doing things in this live call that I did not expect is where we were going to go, but it
Yeah,
was it was very insightful. So
agreed. I know it's fun when you could get two people on the phone and yeah, just have a conversation.
yeah,
Is a cool way to do it. So yeah. So yeah, joining me today. Anything
yeah.
else we need to leave people with before we sign off?
No, though I do want to say, I want to throw you up a shameless plug. Like, what can they expect next from the Money Nomad?
Oh yeah. So okay, yeah. So I know last week's piece was very fun for me for a variety of reasons, but yeah, it was kind of the first piece I really talked about astrology. I think like January. I've kind of been more on like the money, Bitcoin, all of the kind of side of it. And no, yeah, I was just talking with a colleague of mine, and she's like, "You need to talk more astrology." I was like I know. So I don't know. I've took a step back from like talking about astrology so open, but yeah, I mean, as the money nomad, like wealth coach, Bitcoin educator, astrologer, and world traveler, all like titles. And so sometimes it's just a bit of a balance between all four of those. I mean, yeah, in the world traveler, just talking about my the travels I've been on because yeah, I've been to Guatemala and Panama. That's kind of how I knew. I was like, which one? I'm like, oh yeah, I remember when I was there. I was like about that. But yeah, so I'll talk some money and how to yeah, make money makes financial freedom be more of a reality, but Bitcoin's a big part of that. And so I educate on Bitcoin and then I weave some astrology into it as well. And astrology, it's yeah, it's going back to your question earlier, it ties in a variety of ways. So in some ways I'm still trying to find the right balance between it all, but astrology kind of helps tap into like if you think about wealth as like a state, like you build wealth from the inside before you kind of experience it on the like especially in like a financial sense, like a financial abundance kind of way. So, and there's all kind of tools to do that, but astrology is one of the tools to understand that you are who you are for a reason, and We all have gifts, we all have strengths and weaknesses, and being able to like know what that is goes a long way into exercising that state of wealth,
Right.
which eventually leads down to the actual building the wealth. So yeah, some astrology, some yeah, maybe I don't know, a bit of everything.
Okay. Sounds good. And then for those of us who are watching, on my side, 'cause I'm gonna throw in a shameless plug for myself as well.
Yeah,
Hopefully that's okay.
yeah.
Um, for people who are interested this week on Wealth and Wisdom, we have some pretty fun ones that are coming up. I'm going to be covering, since we didn't talk about today, I'm going to be covering the Circle IPO
Oh yes.
in a little bit more detail. I have a follow up article on the three expectations that Wang Yang has to return to the Chinese Communist Party leadership.
Ooh.
And hopefully, we're finishing up crystallizing public opinion this week. So hopefully, we'll have an article on that as well, since I've been on a bit of a Bernays kick. So that way,
Damn, I'm very excited. And I love how you like chase like three things at once. It's very Gemini actually.
yeah, it's
Oh yeah, I pretty much do that in the same.
it's been one of those things where, and I even said this in the last article I did on China. The more I learn about these things, the more interested I get, and the more I'm like, please understand, I'm not trying to be critical of these things. It's just looking at what's coming next, because we can talk all day long about what has been, but in the words of every investment professor and investment professional I've talked to, past performance does not equal future results.
But at the same,
And I think
the more you
there's
in the past, the better idea you have for the what's will happen in the future.
ideally under Occam's razor, it should be a pattern,
Yeah,
but
and it is based on like a certain astrological changes of cycles coming back around from 80 years ago and 250 years ago.
um, doing doing the research about what's happening right now, especially if you can plug into some chatter that hasn't been officially publicized yet, you can get a good idea of where the black swans are coming from. And that is, in my mind, that is what makes or breaks a person, especially in the investing world. Is if you can prepare for the unpreparable. That's not a real word. If you can prepare for what no one saw coming.
The
So,
incomparable. It's now a word.
so yeah,
I love it. Ah, so much exciting things on the horizon.
perfect. Well, thank you, Brandon, for inviting me back. Hopefully, I don't talk your ears off to the point where we don't do this anymore, because this is a
Oh,
lot of
I'm a Gemini. I can talk all day.
fun.
If you get two Geminis together, we can talk all day.
True, true.
And yeah, especially while we're in the midst of our season of Gemini season. So yeah, you have a birthday coming up. Happy early birthday to you.
Thank
My
you.
birthday just passed.
Yeah, happy birthday to you as well.
Thank you. So yeah, I hope everyone has a lovely June, a lovely Gemini season. And
Perfect.
yeah, we'll definitely be back with another live at some point in the future. Thank you.
Yeah, sounds good.
All right.
Perfect.
Take care, everyone.
Bye now.